Chapter 17:15. Yin Xiao, do you think I'm old? Jingyu suddenly turned her head and asked Yin Xiao, what are you talking about, Imperial Concubine? Imperial Concubine is so young and beautiful. How can you be old? Yin Xiao was slightly stunned by Jingyu's question. Then she replied with a smile. That's right. Jingyu calculated carefully. She was only in her 20s, the age when she just graduated from university in the modern era. Why did she feel so old? Speaking of which, she had lived 2 lives. She wasn't old in person, but her heart was old. The more Jingyu thought about it, the more she smiled. The corners of her lips curled up faintly. She turned her head to look at Yin Xiao and said, Go and see if Ninth Uncle has returned. Tell him that I miss him. If he doesn't return soon, I'm going to flip the heavens. Yes. When Yin Xiao heard Jingyu's words, a faint smile appeared in her eyes as she replied respectfully. When Xiao Chun came back, Jingyu was indeed flipping the heavens. Xiao Chun walked into the room and saw Jingyu, who had thrown her blanket all over the floor. Jingyu was lying on the floor. Although the floor was covered with a blanket, how could she just lie on it like that? Jingyu, Xiao Chun's voice was filled with anger. He went forward and carried Jingyu. Jingyu cried out in surprise. She blinked her eyes and looked at Xiao Chun. You're finally back. If you didn't come back, I would have been bored to death. Who allowed you to sleep on the floor? Xiao Chun frowned and looked at Jingyu. You're pregnant with my child. Humph. Jingyu snorted softly and said unhappily, Don't I feel comfortable on the floor? Besides, there's such a thick carpet on the floor. What's there to be afraid of? Xiao furrowed his brows tightly. He really did not know what to say to his unique little wife. Jingyu hugged Xiao Chun's neck and acted coquettishly. After rolling on the soft couch for a long time, Jingyu finally opened her mouth and asked, What did you do in the palace? I heard that Hellion Theo is coming. When will he come? What are you doing here? Did the emperor mention anything about Linglan's marriage? Jingyu threw out one question after another. Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu's small mouth and suddenly kissed her angrily. Jingyu was caught off guard. Why did you suddenly kiss me? Jingyu touched her lips that were red from Xiao Chun's kiss and asked unhappily with a frown. Her eyes were wide open, and it was clear that she was unhappy. This king left early in the morning and returned late at night. Shouldn't you, as his wife, greet him when he gets home? Xiao Chun glared at Jingyu as if he expected better from her. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun's unhappy expression, and a smile appeared in her eyes. Oh, so you're blaming me for not serving you well? Jingyu stood up seriously and reached out to rub Xiao Chun's shoulders. She said softly, Husband, you've worked hard in the palace today. This concubine will help you massage your shoulders. What do you think? Husband, what do you want to eat today? I asked the kitchen to prepare your favorite shredded potato, Jingyu said as she massaged Xiao Chun's shoulders. For some reason, when he heard Jingyu say shredded potato, Xiao Chun suddenly thought of little potato being placed on the dining table. His hair stood on end and his body trembled violently. Chapter 17:16. My wife is pregnant. You should rest well. Xiao Chun smiled at Jingyu. Oh, is that so? You don't want me to serve you anymore? Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun with a smile and said, This is my duty as a wife. Isn't that what you said, royal uncle? I know my mistake. Xiao Chun sighed deeply. If Jingyu treated him like this every day, Xiao Chun would definitely die of frustration. Humph. Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun with disdain and lay back down. She narrowed her eyes at Xiao Chun and said, Can you tell me about the matters in the palace now? Yes. Xiao Chun pursed his lips and said, Xing'er has been conferred the title of Northern General. The imperial edict for the marriage has also been issued. The date is half a month from now. Hellion Theo will also arrive half a month later. As for why Hellion Theo is here, it's probably for the peace treaty. You don't have to worry about that. Xiao Chun pursed his lips and said, If you have nothing to do, think about which residence in the palace is suitable to be the Northern General's residence. Also, Xing'er is someone from this prince's residence, so his marriage won't be shabby at all. If you don't find it annoying, you can discuss with the steward about trifling matters such as the betrothal gifts the guests to be invited, and the dishes needed for the banquet. You mustn't embarrass the prince's residence. Okay. Jing Yu's face was filled with joy when she heard Xiao Chen's words. This Xiao Yuling is really not bad. One is a female general, and he gave Xing Heir the title of Northern General. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with joy as she said calmly, "Well matched." Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "Besides, don't you have this king's mansion to support you?" Yes. Jing Yu nodded and said, "The wedding is in half a month? That might seem a little rushed, but with our financial resources and manpower, half a month should be enough," Jing Yu said happily. "Let me make this clear first." Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu solemnly and said, "This time, we can't do it like we did in Yangzhou City. We're in the Imperial City right now. Do you understand? Do I look like a brainless person to you?" Jing Yu glared at Xiao Chen angrily. Xiao Chen was silent for a moment, then said, "Since you like it so much, I'll leave it to you." "All right," Jing Yu said happily. "I'll definitely make it look good for you. I won't let you lose face." Also, Xiao Chen frowned again and said, "You're still pregnant, so you shouldn't work too hard. Xing Yi went out, so I'll leave 15th to you. If there's anything, tell 15th to tell me." "Okay." Jing Yu agreed obediently. Xiao Chen looked at Jing Yu's excited expression and shook his head helplessly. "I still have some things to take care of. Eat whatever you want, don't wait for me." "Okay." Jing Yu nodded again. "As for the shredded potatoes, don't eat them anymore." After Xiao Chen said this, he kissed Jing Yu's forehead and left. Jing Yu blinked and wanted to ask Xiao Chen why. However, Xiao Chen had already left. "Don't eat the shredded potatoes? Why?" Jing Yu frowned and suddenly thought of Little Potato, then the shredded potatoes. Chapter 17:17. The moment Jing Yu thought about it, her stomach started to feel uncomfortable. She immediately threw up at the side. Yin Xiao thought that Jing Yu was like this because she was pregnant. Jing Yu decisively ordered the kitchen to never allow potatoes to appear on the dining table. Yin Xiao didn't know why, but since it was Jing Yu's order, she followed it. Because Jing Yu was in charge of Xing Heir's marriage, Jing Yu's originally boring life instantly became busy. Jing Yu also personally took care of the selection of the general's residence. Actually, Jing Yu just wanted to use this as an excuse to walk around the streets. It's really lively outside. Jing Yu sat in the palanquin. She lifted the curtains slightly and looked outside. When she saw the people coming and going on the streets, she immediately curled the corners of her mouth into a joyful smile. Imperial concubine quickly closed the curtains. "Don't let anyone see." Yin Xiao, who was standing beside the sedan, quickly said, "I know." Jing Yu unwillingly put down the curtains. This annoying Xiao Chen. Why did he still want her to wear a veil when everything was fine now? Imperial concubine is here. Just as Jing Yu was cursing in her heart, Yin Xiao's voice came from outside. Jing Yu responded faintly and reached out to pick up the veil on the other side and put it on. Only then did she get off the carriage. "Madam, be careful." 15 Xing looked at Jing Yu nervously. "Don't be so careful." Jing Yu helplessly rolled her eyes and said, "The child is fine. Nothing will happen." "Yes." 15 Xing responded respectfully. However, he still looked very careful. Jing Yu helplessly shook her head. However, her eyes were filled with a faint smile. This Xiao Chen really liked to make a big fuss over nothing. "Is this the best house in this area?" Jing Yu turned to Steward Shui and asked. "Yes, I've sent someone to investigate. This is the best house in this area." Steward Shui nodded respectfully. "Let's go in and take a look. If this house is all right, we can renovate it and make it the Northern General's residence." Jing Yu responded faintly and walked towards the courtyard. The courtyard was very spacious. Jing Yu looked at the layout through the veil and was very satisfied. Just as Jing Yu was thinking about continuing forward, she suddenly saw a black shadow flash by. She frowned slightly and turned to look at 15th Interrogation Officer. 15th Interrogation Officer nodded slightly and left silently without anyone noticing. "This house is really not bad." Jing Yu nodded her head in satisfaction. Everything was there, and it was very grand. It would be perfect to treat this residence as the general's residence. "I think it's not bad, too." Steward Chui's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. Such a good location and such a good house. How could it be empty for so long? It really shouldn't be. Jingyu frowned slightly and said, Steward Chui, is there something fishy about this house? No, no. I specially asked the stewards, and they all said that this house is good. Steward Chui quickly waved his hand and said, Is that so? Jingyu calmly narrowed her eyes and glanced at Steward Chui. When they entered the house, Jingyu clearly saw the looks of the people outside pointing at the house. After that black shadow, Jingyu's lips curled into an amused smile. It seemed that today would be very interesting. Chapter 17-18. Yin Xiao, go out and ask around. Jingyu looked sideways at Yin Xiao and said, Ask a few more people. I want to know what's so strange about this house. Yes. Yin Xiao responded, turned around, and left. When Steward Chui saw this scene, he instantly wiped off his cold sweat. He stood at the side and did not dare to make a sound. He only muttered in his heart, That damned person better not get me into trouble. Madam, Yin Xiao had only left for a while before she ran back in a panic. Her eyes were filled with panic as she looked at Jingyu and said, Madam, leave this place quickly. The people outside are all saying that this is a haunted house. It's not clean inside. Don't offend Madam and the young master in Madam's belly. As Yin Xiao spoke, she wanted to protect Jingyu and leave. Jingyu's eyes were instantly filled with a smile. Don't be so busy. Jingyu looked at Yin Xiao indifferently and stopped her. She turned around to look at Steward Chui and asked very calmly, Tell this imperial concubine what's going on. Don't tell me you think this imperial concubine is a woman. So you colluded with the people from the Ministry of Revenue to bully this imperial concubine. Jingyu's words were filled with sternness. When Steward Chui heard Jingyu's words, his body trembled violently. His face was filled with fear as he begged for mercy. Ninth Imperial Concubine, please forgive me. This servant was greedy and did not find out clearly before getting someone to bring over the key. I never expected that the people from the Ministry of Revenue would filter out this unclean house. Steward Chui was simply paralyzed with fear. Oomph. Jingyu's eyes were filled with coldness as she said coldly, Go and call the people from the Ministry of Revenue here. This imperial concubine wants to ask them properly whether they think this imperial concubine is easy to bully. As soon as Jingyu said this, Steward Chui knew that something big was about to happen. When the ninth imperial concubine was choosing a residence for her subordinates, she was attacked by something unclean. It was the residents behind her. When this news spread, the entire imperial city was in an uproar. When the people from the Ministry of Revenue heard this news, they were shocked. The Minister of Revenue scrambled to appear in front of Jingyu. Greetings to the ninth imperial concubine. Jingyu asked someone to bring a chair over. At this moment, she was sitting leisurely in the courtyard. She quietly looked at the Minister of Revenue and the Assistant Minister of Revenue kneeling on the ground. Looking at their faces dripping with cold sweat, Jingyu suddenly felt that it was very amusing. You're the Minister of Revenue? Jingyu didn't call him out. Instead, she asked calmly. Yes, this lowly official is. The Minister of Revenue, Ijo, had been in his position for a very long time. What kind of storms and waves had he not seen? But today, he knew that he was in big trouble. His face instantly turned pale, and he knelt on the ground motionlessly. Jingyu looked at Ijo's appearance, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Let me ask you, are you in charge of the matters of this residence? Jingyu asked calmly. Her face was covered by a veil, and her words were very calm. Ijo's body trembled violently when he heard this question. Here it comes. Yes, it is this lowly official who is in charge. As Ijo responded to Jingyu's words, he was thinking about how to find an excuse for himself. Chapter 17-19. Let me ask you again. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and asked again, Did you personally inspect this residence? And did you check it properly? You could have included it in the selection. This lowly official is only in charge of taking in the mansions. This matter of taking them out for screening was checked by the people from the Supreme Court before it could be used for screening. He Ijo swallowed his saliva slightly and said, "Oh, is that so?" Jingyu's lips curled up calmly. He Ijo shuddered when he heard Jingyu's question. He made up his mind. No matter what, he was going to be punished. Then he would drag everyone down with him. Yes, I wouldn't dare to lie to the ninth imperial concubine, Hiijo said with a long face. I didn't expect the Supreme Court to be so negligent. They didn't even check the residence properly before reporting it. I didn't expect to offend the ninth imperial concubine. Please forgive me, ninth imperial concubine. I deserve to die 10,000 times, Hiijo said with a sorrowful expression. When Jingyu heard this person's words, she couldn't help but laugh. These people's words were really interesting. On one hand, they were asking for forgiveness, while on the other hand, they were saying that they deserved to die. Jingyu felt that teasing these people was very interesting. Since Lord he has said so, then go and call the people from the Supreme Court over. Jingyu calmly raised her eyebrows slightly and turned her head to say, Hiijo heard Jingyu's words and swallowed his saliva silently. His heart couldn't help but beat faster. He didn't know what Jingyu was thinking. He originally thought that he could fool her, but now it seemed like it wouldn't be easy to fool her. Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling were discussing official matters in the palace when they suddenly heard this news. Both of them were stunned. It was said that the ninth imperial concubine had taken away the Minister of Revenue and the Supreme Court. When this news reached Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling's ears, they were immediately dumbfounded. What kind of big deal was this? What exactly happened? Xiao Yuling frowned and asked the person who came to report the news. I heard that the ninth imperial concubine brought people to choose a residence for the Jinyuan general. However, when they entered the residence, they were attacked by ghosts and almost fainted. It turns out that the residence is not clean. Right now, the ninth imperial concubine is furious. The person said anxiously, "What did you say?" When Xiao Chun heard that Jingyu had almost fainted, he immediately stood up. When he thought about how Jingyu was pregnant and had encountered such a thing, he immediately became gloomy. This servant said, the ninth imperial concubine is... When the person saw Xiao Chen's gloomy expression, he trembled and almost peed in his pants. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Xiao Chan rush out like a gust of wind. These damned people. Xiao Yuling was so angry that her face turned green. When she saw Xiao Chen run out, she frowned and said, "Prepare the sedan. We are leaving the palace." What? Your Majesty is going out personally? When the head eunuch heard Xiao Yuling's words, his eyes widened and he asked, "If we don't go personally, are we supposed to sit here and wait for Imperial Uncle to send back the heads of the Supreme Court and the Minister of Revenue?" Xiao Yuling glared fiercely at the eunuch and said, Chapter 17:20. This servant will do it right away. The eunuch's body trembled violently when he heard this. He swallowed his saliva and hurriedly turned around to do it. The ninth empress was really capable of doing such a thing. Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling rushed over. As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the mansion, they heard a series of earth-shattering cries and shouts coming from inside. Listening to the cries and curses, it was simply a mess. Xiao Chun walked in with a frown. His eyes were filled with sternness. However, when he walked in and saw the situation inside, he was instantly stunned. The Minister of the Supreme Court and the Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, who were incomparably glorious in the imperial court, were now tied to a chair and being beaten. The sound of the paddles hitting them was extremely loud. Do you know where you were wrong now? The ninth imperial concubine, who was so frightened that she almost fainted, was holding a cup of tea and slowly drinking it. She looked very calm. Ninth imperial concubine, please spare our lives. We won't dare to do it again. The two men howled loudly. Xiao Chun stood at the side, and the corner of his mouth twitched violently. Just as Yin Xiao was thinking that it was funny, she turned around and suddenly saw Xiao Chen's figure. She immediately trembled in fear and hurriedly knelt down and shouted, "Greetings, ninth emperors!" Instantly, everyone knelt down and a series of greetings could be heard. When Jingyu saw Xiao Chun, she immediately stood up and was shocked. Why was Xiao Chen here? Xiao Chun, Jingyu called out silently. She had beaten up the officials of the imperial court. Would Xiao Chen scold her? Who would have thought that Xiao Chan would stare at Jingyu for a long time and then slowly ask, "Are you all right?" Jingyu was slightly taken aback. She then lowered her head and replied, "I'm fine. There's no need for you to deal with these people personally. Don't forget that you're pregnant." When Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's reply, he frowned in dissatisfaction and said, "If you scared this king's child, how will you be punished?" All right. When Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's words, she immediately pulled Xiao Chen's hand and said unhappily, "Aren't I fine? Our child is also here," Jingyu said as she pulled Xiao Chen's hand and placed it on her stomach. She blinked her starry eyes and looked at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chen looked at Jingyu's appearance, and his heart suddenly softened. He sighed helplessly and reached out to touch Jingyu's cheek and said, "You're really worrisome. What's going on? Where's 15? Xiao Chen looked around and didn't see 15. He suddenly frowned and asked, "Oh, 15. Jingyu pursed her lips slightly and said, "I asked 15 to catch the ghost." When Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's words, he suddenly frowned and looked at Jingyu strangely. "This is the haunted house." Xiao Chun looked around, and then his gaze fell on the two people tied to the chair. He waved his hand and said, "Put these two people down and tell this king what's going on. Ninth Emperors, please spare our lives." No matter what, the first thing they said was definitely going to be begging for mercy. Chapter 17:21. Xiao Chen looked at the two of them expressionlessly. He stared at them with his dark eyes and instantly silenced their pleas. He seemed to have read a message from Xiao Chen's eyes. If they said another word, they would be beheaded. This residence belonged to an official a few years ago. He seemed to have offended the second prince. Then, for some unknown reason, he was found guilty of corruption and his entire family was beheaded. Originally, everything would be fine after the cleanup, but who knew this residence would start to have frequent incidents. Ijo swallowed his saliva silently and said, "This lowly official found many Taoist priests to exorcise the ghosts. After that, there was a year of peace. This lowly official then reported this residence to the higher-ups and included it in the selection process. Who would have thought that this would happen again in the past 2 years?" Ijo's eyes were filled with bitterness as he said, "If this matter was reported, this lowly official would not be able to keep my official position. Thus, this lowly official suppressed this matter. Originally, I thought that this person would be fine after moving in. But, Ninth Emperors, please forgive this lowly official. This lowly official really didn't expect to offend the 9th Imperial concubine." When Ijo said this, he immediately howled with a face that was about to cry. Jingyu and Xiao Chun looked at each other after hearing this. Instantly, their eyes were filled with interest. This residence really had a lot of stories. However, Jingyu was interested in the second prince that Ijo mentioned. Jingyu was slightly stunned. This was the second prince, Xiao Jingran. When she suddenly heard this person's name, Jingyu was dazed for a moment. She didn't know where Xiao Jingran had gone. It seemed that during the Tokyo coup, Jingyu hadn't seen or heard any news about this person. Jingyu frowned slightly and looked at Xiao Chun. Just as she was about to speak, she heard the words, "His Majesty has arrived." She immediately swallowed her words and stepped forward to greet him. Even Xiao Yuling was alarmed. It seemed that today's matter wasn't over yet. "Imperial uncle, Imperial aunt, please dispense with the formalities. We heard that Imperial aunt was frightened. Are you all right?" Xiao Yuling hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Many thanks for your Majesty's concern. This lowly official is fine." Jingyu silently took a step back and cursed Xiao Yuling in her heart. He was really an old fox. Wasn't he clearly trying to undermine her? However, since Xiao Yuling was the emperor and Miao Qiu's man, she didn't mind. She would just leave this matter to these men to deal with him. To her, this matter, she, to Miao, this matter, your Majesty came at the right time. Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes and said, "These two people neglected their duties and were greedy for small gains. They didn't care about the important matter of selecting residences. They almost frightened this lowly official's concubine and the crown prince. Your Majesty, what do you think should be done? Jing Yu's concession didn't mean that Xiao Chun would do the same. After hearing his words, He Zhou and the Supreme Court Chancellor's faces instantly turned pale. What? There's actually such a thing. When Xiao Yuling heard Xiao Chen's words, his eyes were instantly filled with anger, and he shouted coldly, 15 is back. Just as Xiao Yuling was about to say something, Jing Yu saw 15 Xing leaping down from the roof. He was holding a person in white clothes in his hand. The sight of him covered in blood was really frightening. Chapter 1722. Master. 15 Xing bowed respectfully towards Xiao Chun before greeting the emperor. Then, he said to the crowd, This is the person who is playing tricks here. Aya. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with curiosity. She had always been skeptical about the existence of ghosts. If there really were ghosts, then she would be able to feast her eyes. However, if this was fake, then she would have to ponder deeply. Who was this person who had such great ability to actually dare to play tricks here? Your subordinate knocked her out. 15 Xing touched the tip of his nose and said, I thought she was a ghost and did not control my strength well. When 15 Xing said this, he suddenly felt very shy. Jing Yu looked at 15 Xing and found it funny. A dignified shadow guard actually believed in ghosts. She didn't know what 15 Xing was thinking. Jing Yu found it very funny. However, she took a cup of tea from the side and splashed it on the woman's face. This woman's hair was disheveled and her body was covered in blood. If she appeared in the middle of the night, she could really scare people to death. You're awake, Jing Yu said lightly. She watched as the woman trembled and opened her eyes. When she saw Jing Yu and Xiao Chun, then Emperor Xiao Yuling, she immediately shrank back and lowered her eyes. Now let's talk properly. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and sized up the woman. Then, she said, Why are you playing tricks in this residence? Don't you know that this is the residence of the emperor? Who are you? Since Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling did not open their mouths to ask, Jing Yu naturally asked herself. She looked at the woman and said calmly, The Qin family died, crying injustice. I can't accept this. When the woman heard Jing Yu's question, it was as if she had heard some unusually angry words. She glared at Jing Yu and the others and said, The Qin family has served the imperial court and has never rebelled. However, because of one sentence, we have caused the tragedy of our family being exterminated. I can't accept this. The woman's eyes were filled with deep hatred. She glared at Xiao Yuling and said, The old master of the Qin family has always protected the crown prince. I thought that after the crown prince ascended the throne, he would redress the injustice for the Qin family. However, I didn't expect that after the crown prince became the emperor, he completely forgot about the Qin family. As the woman spoke, her eyes were filled with tears. The tears on her face were stained red with some unknown substance. At first glance, one would think that she was shedding tears of blood. It was a horrifying sight to behold. There is no way to appeal. How can the Qin family rest in peace in the underworld? I can't accept this. The woman's face was filled with madness as she said, As long as the injustice of the Qin family is not redressed, how can we allow others to live in this residence? After the woman's words, Jing Yu and Xiao Chun fell silent. When they were in the imperial city, Jing Yu had never cared about the matters of the imperial palace. She knew nothing about the matters of the imperial court. Therefore, she did not have the slightest impression of the Qin family. However, Jing Yu did not know about it, but that did not mean that Xiao Chun and Xiao Yuling did not know. Xiao Chun turned his head to look at Xiao Yuling. The two of them looked at each other and immediately thought of the cause and effect of this matter. Back then, when the crown prince was weak and the second prince was strong, many of the officials were killed. The reason for their death was either because they stood on the wrong side or because they offended someone with a single sentence. Chapter 1723. The Qin family was the latter. During the battle, the position of the crown prince had always been a fleeting phenomenon, as if it could be abolished at any time. The second prince, Xiao Jingran, was so powerful and the crown prince was a sickly person. Qin Shi was the assistant minister of the imperial court and was famous for being impartial. At that time, the people in the imperial court were divided into the crown prince's faction and the second prince's faction. Qin Shi was the only one who had always stayed out of trouble. She couldn't remember clearly what kind of comments had been made in the imperial court. Some people had criticized the second prince, and because of this, the emperor was enraged. However, the emperor wasn't really angry. He was just putting on an act. However, because the second prince had lost his face, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and started to make things difficult for Qin Shi. However, Qin Shi was also a capable person. No matter how hard the second prince tried to make things difficult for him, he was able to stand firm. It was a pity that during this mission, Xiao Jingran took advantage of the opportunity to frame Qin Shi. Before the emperor's imperial edict had been issued, he had directly beheaded everyone in the Qin clan. Because of this, it caused a great commotion in the imperial court. Xiao Yuling felt that she had lost her loyalty and wanted to cry out for justice. However, she was angrily reprimanded by Xiao Jingran and was punished to kneel in the temple. Xiao Chen also said that a little impatience spoiled great plans. If he had stood out to speak for Qin Shi, Xiao Yuling's position as the crown prince would have been gone. Therefore, Xiao Yuling was just putting on an act. In the end, she didn't do anything, and this matter passed muddle-headedly. She didn't expect that the Qin clan had descendants. Who are you in the Qin clan? Xiao Yuling had always been brooding over the Qin clan's matter. However, too many people had died because of it. If it wasn't for this sudden incident today, Xiao Yuling wouldn't have thought of this. I'm just a servant girl in the Qin clan. The woman said calmly, Master and Madam died because of me. I took the young master and escaped. However, the young master didn't suffer so much. He died of illness on the road, and I buried him with my own hands. The Qin family is such a good family. Why did they have to suffer such injustice? I feel indignant on behalf of Master and Madam. Why is the heavenly Tao so unfair? The woman lay on the ground and cried bitterly. After hearing this, Jing Yu sighed deeply. The sky had never been fair. If Qin Shi had bowed his head a little back then, the Qin family would not have fallen into such a situation. Xiao Chen's eyes were calm as he said, Their stubbornness has doomed the Qin family to an early demise. However, this king never expected that a servant girl from the Qin clan would be so protective of her master. You spent so many years helping the Qin clan redress their grievances. You are very good. Xiao stood with his hands behind his back and looked quietly at the woman prostrating on the ground as he spoke. Not bad. Xiao Yuling sighed deeply and said, I have always wanted to be a good emperor. Now it seems that there are still many things that I have not thought of. Your Majesty, have you thought of what to do? Xiao Chen turned his head and asked Xiao Yuling, Is Imperial Uncle thinking of the same thing as I? Xiao Yuling smiled and turned her head to look at Xiao Chen. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. There was a faint smile in their eyes. Jing Yu's heart trembled slightly when she saw the two of them like this. Chapter 1724. I will definitely redress the Qin family's grievances. However, you have been playing tricks and disturbing the hearts of the people. You will still have to bear the consequences. Xiao Yuling looked at the woman quietly and said, Your Majesty is wise. The woman bowed with a face full of joy and said, After I personally witnessed the Qin family's grievances being redressed, I will definitely atone for my sins with my life. You can avoid death, but you cannot escape punishment. Let's not talk about your crimes for now. Xiao Yuling waved her hand slightly and turned to look at He Yizhou and the Supreme Court Chancellor. She said, The two of you, tell me, what crimes do I want to punish you for? Your Majesty, please spare us. The two of them were originally listening attentively. Suddenly, Xiao Yuling's tone changed and the butcher's knife was once again turned to them. Instantly, they wailed in anguish. He Yizhou will be demoted to half of his position. The Supreme Court Chancellor will temporarily take back his authority. The two of you can go back after receiving 20 beatings. The moment Xiao Yuling finished speaking, the two of them started wailing. However, they were secretly rejoicing in their hearts. Fortunately, they did not lose their official position. Their heads were still intact. What happened today spread throughout the imperial city in an instant. Xiao Yiling was probably really provoked by this incident. She ordered the people of the Ministry of Justice to start overturning the case. All the old matters were dug up. One case after another was overturned. The imperial city was filled with cheers for Xiao Yiling, shouting that she was a good emperor. Jingyu, who was in the prince's residence, heard such words. Instantly, her eyes were filled with joy. Xiao Yiling was not stupid. After this series of events, Xing Er's residence was also settled. Jingyu called for people to renovate the residence. The things that needed to be added or purchased were all done by her personally. It had to be said that the people in the prince's residence were very efficient. Jingyu was very satisfied with this. Your Majesty, quickly rest. These days, Yin Xiao was very busy. Seeing Jingyu like this, Yin Xiao's heart ached. At this moment, Jingyu was leaning on the soft couch and taking a nap. Yin Xiao's heart ached as she spoke. Jingyu turned her head slightly and saw Yin Xiao's distressed expression. She smiled helplessly. Such a small matter can tire me out? Jingyu looked at Yin Xiao and said, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. The child in my stomach is fine too. Imperial concubine is such a good person. Imperial concubine is so concerned about Lord Xing Er's marriage. Yin Xiao sighed. Although Xing Er was Xiao Chen's favorite, he was still a shadow guard. It was really not easy for Jingyu to go to such lengths for Xing Er. Yin Xiao said with a sigh. Jingyu's lips curled up slightly as she said, Second Xing has saved me and ninth royal uncle countless times in times of danger. No matter what the situation is, he never leaves and serves his master with such loyalty. Now, he is marrying my good sister. No matter what, I should do all this. Jingyu said calmly, this is what Xing Er deserves. Xing Er had just walked to the door of Jingyu's room when he heard these words. Instantly, he froze on the spot. His eyes were filled with shock. He stood quietly in front of the door for a long time without moving. The trembling of his heart was so clear and distinct. Chapter 1725. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was in that small town by the border and saw that strange woman. She could make a wild horse listen to her and angrily point at the portrait pasted on the notice board and ask him, which part of this portrait looks like her? He still remembered that when he said it looked like her, she said with disdain, you're blind. Xing Er's lips curled into a faint smile. At that time, he did not treat her as a master that he had to protect. After that, he even blamed her in his heart and felt pity for his master for taking a fancy to such a woman. Now that he thought about it, he was full of joy. Xing Er, are you outside? Jingyu's voice rang out from inside. Second interrogation officer retracted that distant memory, stood up straight and answered loudly, then lifted his feet and walked into the room. Greetings, madam. Xing Er bowed respectfully. Why are you still a subordinate? Jingyu looked at Xing Er and smiled. Now you're the northern general. You can't call yourself a subordinate anymore. I am no longer your madam. Xing Er frowned slightly. Then, as if he was unwilling, he called out again, Greetings, imperial concubine. That's right. Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile. She looked Xing Er up and down. Now Xing Er was not wearing the secret guard's uniform. Looking at the official's uniform, it was true that the clothes made the man and the saddle made the horse. Xing Er's clothes were perfect for him. Jingyu's eyes were full of smiles. Xing Er lowered his head under Jingyu's gaze. What are you here for today? Jingyu looked at Xing Er and asked, I am here to thank Imperial Concubine for choosing this mansion. I like it very much. Xing Er said quietly. Did Xiao Chun ask you to come? Jingyu heard Xing Er's words and found it funny. She looked at Xing Er and said, All right, I know you are a new official. Now is an important time. Don't waste your time with me. I will arrange your marriage for you. When the time comes, you can wait to get a beauty. Jingyu said faintly. The smile in her eyes made Xing Er blush silently. Thank you, Imperial Concubine. Xing Er thanked her again. Jingyu watched Xing Er leave and sighed in her heart. Xing Er was too similar to Xiao Chun. It was just that Xiao Chun was cold on the outside, but passionate on the inside. Looking at Xing she was really curious how the two Shangwan Linglan, who were both ice and fire, could get along with each other. Who said that fire and water were incompatible? Looking at it now, it seemed like they were getting along well. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and rested on the soft couch. Xiaochen had been very busy these few days. The things he was busy with were naturally the unjust cases. Jingyu didn't ask about it. "Yin Xiao, how is the restaurant I asked you to find?" Jingyu narrowed her eyes and asked. When Yin Xiao heard Jingyu's question, she was shocked and asked, "Imperial concubine, are you not holding a banquet at You Have Money restaurant? Do you want to find another one?" Jingyu's eyes were filled with a strange look. Then, as if she thought of something, she frowned slightly and said, "You Have Money is opening for business? Shen Yuqing is back?" "Yes, does Imperial concubine not know?" Yin Xiao nodded and said. Chapter 17:26. "So you're really back." Jingyu's eyes lit up as she said, "Let's go to the restaurant to take a look." Now, Yin Xiao's eyes revealed a surprised expression as she looked at Jingyu and asked, "Naturally now?" Jingyu slowly nodded. Yin Xiao's eyes were filled with surprise. Looking at Jingyu's expression, she didn't seem to be joking. There were people coming and going on the streets. Jingyu looked at the scenery in front of her and slightly narrowed her eyes. Looking at these familiar streets, she seemed to recall the time when she went to school to learn etiquette and passed by these places. In the past, she often got lost on these streets. "This street has been rebuilt?" Jingyu slightly frowned and asked. "Yes, the walls on both sides of the street were destroyed." Yin Xiao said very respectfully. "No wonder it looks a lot more spacious." Jingyu slightly nodded and lowered the curtain. She quietly sat in the carriage and moved forward. When they reached the end of the street, Jingyu got off the carriage. "There are so many people in front. Let's walk." Jingyu was dressed gorgeously and wore a gauze hat. Standing on the street, she was quite eye-catching. Yin Xiao didn't agree with Jingyu walking. However, Jingyu was so insistent that Yin Xiao naturally couldn't say anything. She could only support Jingyu properly and let people open a path in front of her. She couldn't let anyone get close to Jingyu. Jingyu looked at Yin Xiao's cautious appearance and smiled helplessly, but let her go. "These little toys are quite good. When the child is born, he can play with them. You two go and choose some exquisite ones." Jingyu said to the servants behind her. "This servant will go right away." The two servants nodded and went to choose. When they passed by the tailor's shop, Jingyu suddenly thought of Little Potato. She frowned slightly and said, "Since this restaurant is open, then is Chong Yuan open as well?" Replying to the imperial concubine, "They are all open for business." Yin Xiao nodded and said, "That's great. Let's go to the restaurant first, and then we'll go to Chong Yuan to make some clothes for the child." Jingyu raised her eyebrows and said, "We don't know the gender of the child in her belly, but we can make Little Potato's clothes first." "Yes," Yin Xiao replied. Jingyu walked forward with light steps. She would order people to buy whatever she saw. Jingyu narrowed her eyes slightly. As she walked forward, she saw the restaurant that appeared in front of everyone's eyes in the distance. "Come if you have money." The three gilded words were so hilarious. She didn't know what she was thinking at that time. Why did she give it such a name? But she really liked it. The corners of Jingyu's lips curled up slightly. She stood leisurely in front of the restaurant and saw the maids standing at the side of the restaurant. She watched as the maids welcomed the guests in with appropriate smiles. Suddenly, Jingyu's eyes became a little dazed. It was as if she had returned to the modern era. Jingyu lowered her head slightly. Looking at the ancient surroundings, Jingyu smiled faintly. How could she be in the modern era? Jingyu came back to her senses and walked toward the restaurant. The people standing at the door saw Jingyu and her group. Looking at their clothes, they knew that they weren't ordinary people. They immediately went forward to welcome Jingyu in. Chapter 17:27. However, just as Jingyu entered the restaurant, she heard a commotion behind her. "Stop! You can't go in." This voice attracted Jingyu's attention. She couldn't help but wonder who she had stopped. Jingyu turned around and saw the person who had been stopped by a maid at the entrance. The person who had been stopped was an old man. He had a flagon of wine hanging from his waist and a walking stick in his hand. His clothes looked very tattered. At this moment, he was stopped by someone and was so angry that his face and neck were red. "Little girl, what right do you have to stop me from going in? This restaurant is a place to eat. Why can't I go in?" The old man seemed to be very angry as he glared at the maid angrily. The commotion attracted everyone's attention. "Why don't you take a look at where you are? How could someone like you come in as you please?" The maid looked at the old man with disdain in her eyes. She took a step back and wrinkled her nose as if she was disgusted with the old man. "What a joke!" The old man was infuriated. He looked at his clothes and said, "Could it be that you're rejecting me just because of my clothes? Where did this old man think this place was? I think it's just your restaurant that's taking advantage of its power to bully others." What a snob. The old man was so angry that he stomped his feet. Where did this rude person come from? Beat him out. The maid's eyes were full of anger. The thugs at the side rubbed their fists and were about to step forward. Jing Yu's eyebrows jumped as she watched from the side. "Stop." When she saw this scene, she couldn't take it anymore. Her eyes were full of anger as she shouted. The crowd was full of pointing fingers. When Jing Yu shouted, everyone's eyes turned to Jing Yu. Seeing Jing Yu's clothes and the posture of the people behind her, they knew that Jing Yu was definitely not an ordinary person. Furthermore, Jing Yu's words made everyone feel like they were watching a show. "Madam, this is a matter of our restaurant. Please don't interfere." When a maid saw that her order had been interrupted, she immediately felt uncomfortable. Although Jing Yu was dressed in gorgeous clothes, she didn't know what to do. However, there was a thought in his heart. No matter how well he dressed, he couldn't be more impressive than the 9 emperors. This was the 9th emperor. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't be polite with his words. When Jing Yu heard the woman's words, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She was so angry that she laughed. Everyone was wondering how Jing Yu would react. Unexpectedly, Jing Yu stared at the woman for a long time. Then, under everyone's gaze, she raised her hand and slapped the woman. The crisp sound of the slap caused the whispering crowd to fall into a strange silence. "How dare you?" The maidservant was also stunned by the slap. When she reacted, she felt incomparably ashamed and angry. She opened her mouth to speak, but Jing Yu swung her hand and slapped her again. The maidservant was furious. As an errand boy in this restaurant, who didn't treat him politely when they came in, when had he ever been slapped? "Yes, I slapped you. So what?" Jing Yu's cold voice rang out. The woman covered her face and trembled with anger. Then, she screamed like a madwoman. "Someone come quickly. Throw them out." Chapter 1728. Let's see who dares to move. Jing Yu's imposing voice rang out. Those large hands stiffened and stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move an inch. "Today, I've seen for myself that this restaurant was ruined by rats like you." Jing Yu took a deep breath and slowly turned her head to look at the completely dumbfounded shopkeeper. She said, "Go get Shen Yuqing for me. This will take care of." The shopkeeper was slightly taken aback when he heard Jing Yu's words. Just as he was about to speak, Jing Yu suddenly turned her head and reached out to take off the veil on her head. "Do you want to walk and call him out? Or do you want this imperial concubine to break your legs and make you crawl?" A pair of golden green eyes appeared in front of everyone. That beautiful face that everyone was familiar with was revealed before everyone's eyes. When the shopkeeper saw Jing Yu's face, he was so shocked that he almost bit his tongue off. Under the gaze of that pair of demonic eyes, he practically crawled and rolled into the back room. The moment that arrogant woman saw Jing Yu's pair of demonic eyes, her eyes widened as if she had seen a ghost. Her face turned pale and her knees gave way. She sat on the ground in a daze, completely speechless. At this moment, the crowd was dead silent. Their bodies trembled violently as they looked at Jing Yu's pair of demonic eyes. They never imagined that this woman who casually walked in would actually be the owner of this restaurant. This lowly one, Shen Yuqing, greets the owner. Shen Yuqing rushed out as fast as he could. After not seeing him for a few years, Shen Yuqing had aged a lot. The moment he saw Jing Yu, he almost knelt down with tears streaming down his face. Jing Yu looked at Shen Yuqing, who was kneeling in front of her. She couldn't associate him with the person who wanted to sell the restaurant to make a living. Uncle Shun, do you still remember what I said when I handed this restaurant over to you? Jingyu pursed her lips tightly and looked at Shun Yuqing as she asked calmly. How could this lowly one dare to forget? Shun Yuqing said in a trembling voice. The owner said that this restaurant was the result of the owner's painstaking efforts. She also said that this restaurant must be protected no matter what. She also said that she shouldn't doubt the people she used. The people she used should be carefully selected. That's right. Jingyu nodded her head in satisfaction. Now, tell me, did you remember what I said? This lowly one remembers. Shun Yuqing pursed his lips and said, this lowly one was in a rush to open. I don't care how this restaurant makes money. Jingyu looked at Shun Yuqing calmly and said, I'd rather you prepare for half a year before opening. I don't want to see a person like this standing here to welcome guests when you open. Owner, please forgive me. Shun Yuqing's eyes were filled with fear as he bowed and apologized. Get up, Jingyu said calmly, and turned to look at the woman. Her golden green eyes narrowed coldly as she said, do you think you're superior just because you're standing in front of this restaurant? Tell this imperial concubine, what right do you have to be so arrogant? Jingyu looked coldly at the woman sitting on the ground and said, remember, this restaurant is mine, not yours. You're just a worker here. Chapter 1729. They're the customers, the masters you have to serve. Regardless of whether you are dressed lavishly or in rags, since you have decided to work here, you should be prepared to lower yourself. With your appearance, no matter where you go, you'll be disgusting. Jingyu's words were not polite at all. The woman did not dare to say a word after being insulted by Jingyu. Jingyu slowly lowered her eyes and said, chase her out and spread the news about this imperial concubine. No matter which house or restaurant she is in, if they dare to take her in, they will be going against the 9th emperors and the Wang family. If this imperial concubine finds out, I will not let them off easily. After Jingyu finished speaking, everyone had the same thought. They wanted to stay away from this woman. If they offended the 9th emperors, they would be in big trouble. Dear customer, Jingyu then turned to the old man at the side and said, this time, it's the people in my shop who offended the customer. I've already disciplined them. I guarantee that such a thing won't happen again in the future. Please forgive me. Dear customer, you are free of charge today in this restaurant. Would it be possible for you to have a seat on my face? Jingyu bowed politely to the elderly man. As the 9th imperial concubine, she was not even this courteous to the emperor. However, he was now being so polite to an old man in ragged clothes. The crowd of spectators nodded their heads when they saw this scene. Diagonally across from the restaurant, a green figure saw this scene from the top of a certain restaurant. Then she chuckled and hugged the child in her arms tighter. She said calmly, so this is the imperial concubine with different pupils. Not bad at all. This farce instantly spread throughout the imperial city. Jingyu's clean and sharp way of doing things made everyone gasp in amazement. Those who saw it described it vividly. Jingyu only found out about it later. In the elegant room of the restaurant, it was clear that someone often came here to clean it. Everything was placed neatly. It hadn't changed at all since Jingyu left. The corners of Jingyu's mouth curled up slightly when she saw this scene. After standing for so long, my legs are sore. She was pregnant. Why did her body become so delicate? Jingyu lay on the soft couch. After resting for a while, Yin Xiao obediently went forward and helped massage Jingyu's arms and legs. Jingyu then felt more comfortable. When Jingyu was almost done resting, Xing Wu's voice came from outside, saying that Shun Yuqing wanted to see Jingyu. Let him in. Jingyu waved her hand slightly at Yin Xiao. Then, she sat up straight and saw Shun Yuqing walk in. Shun Yuqing knew that he had done something wrong. The moment he entered, he knelt down and bowed. Uncle Shun, have a seat. Jingyu looked at the few strands of white hair on Shun Yuqing's head. She sighed slightly and asked Yin Xiao to pour tea for him. I'm indeed angry about today's matter. Jingyu was silent for a moment before speaking. I was negligent, Shun Yuqing said, and was about to kneel again. Jingyu raised her hand slightly and said, I know you were happy for a moment. It was not easy for this restaurant to be able to reopen and survive until now. Yes, Uncle Shun said with a sigh. I thought I would never see boss again. Chapter 17:30. Huh. Jingyu chuckled and said, the incident with this restaurant is also telling us that now that the restaurant is getting bigger, it's inevitable that there will be parasites. But I don't want to see this kind of thing happen again. This incident is also a reminder to all of you. Even if it breaks through the sky, this restaurant is still just a restaurant. Jingyu lowered her head and said, he has nothing to do with any power. You have to be careful in the future. Yes, this lowly one understands. Shen Yuqing understood Jing-Yu's meaning very well. She was probably influenced by him. Back then, this restaurant had experienced so many setbacks before it opened. Shen Yuqing often praised Jingyu. Now that the 9 Emperors' power had grown, if he continued to praise her, it would be counterproductive. Shen Yuqing didn't think of this, which led to this situation. Fortunately, Jingyu's actions today were seen by all the subordinates in the restaurant. It also let others know of Jingyu's attitude and the restaurant's attitude. This was a good thing. There's one more thing. Jingyu looked at Shen Yuqing and said, on the 18th of July, I want to hold a big banquet in our restaurant. It's the wedding of the Jinyuan General and Miss Shangwan. You have to prepare 2 days in advance. I want this wedding banquet to be the most extravagant. Do you understand what I mean? Jingyu looked at Shen Yuqing and said, yes, I understand. Shen Yuqing nodded slowly and said, when I heard about the wedding of the Jinyuan General and Miss Shangwan, I knew that boss would definitely come. I just didn't expect boss to come so quickly. If I came late, who knows what you would have done? Jingyu looked at Shen Yuqing helplessly. She still spoke in a reproachful tone, but the anger in her heart had dissipated. Boss, please calm down. I will definitely arrange the marriage between the Jinyuan General and Miss Shangwan well, Shen Yuqing said with a smile. Jingyu nodded in satisfaction and said, about the dishes, please take good care of them. Go and call the chef over. I'll give him a big dish as the main course of the wedding banquet. As for the number of tables needed, I'll send someone over to inform you in a few days. Yes, Shen Yuqing nodded repeatedly. When the time comes, this restaurant definitely won't be able to accommodate all of us. Tear down the side door of the restaurant and place more tables and chairs outside. We'll take over the entire street outside. Jingyu supported her head and said, this time, we have to be arrogant. Yes, I understand. Shen Yuqing nodded repeatedly. Just by listening to Jingyu's words, he could already imagine what a grand occasion it would be. During this period of time, you should hurry up and renovate this restaurant. When the time comes, the people from the Northern Pastoral will also come. There's no need to renovate it too much. What needs to be renovated, what needs to be changed, change what needs to be changed. Those decorations, calligraphy, and paintings should all be changed. Change the colors of those decorations, and the layout can be moved slightly to make it seem like there's a difference. However, if you look closely, you won't see any changes. Take good care of it. When everything is ready, I'll take a look at the dishes and your decorations. Jingyu said everything she wanted to say. Shen Yuqing nodded repeatedly on the side. Jingyu then said a few things to take note of, as well as etiquette for the day, as well as clothing matters. After that, everything was settled. Chapter 17:31. Jingyu was extremely tired after this conversation. She originally wanted to go to enrich Court, but now Jingyu wanted nothing more than to immediately fall asleep on the bed. How could she be in a mood to choose clothes? Enduring her tiredness, Jingyu got up to leave after teaching him how to make the dishes. Madam, Master's carriage is waiting outside. Jingyu had just stepped out of the private room when she heard 15th Xing's words. She was slightly taken aback and asked curiously, Xiao Chun is here? Yes, Master has been here for a while. I saw that Madam was busy, so I didn't disturb you. 15th Xing nodded slowly. You're really considerate. Jingyu smiled at 15th Xing and said, let's go. Let's not make Xiao Chun wait too long. When Jingyu walked out of the inn, she saw the black carriage. Her lips curled into a faint smile, and even her heart warmed. She let In Xiao help her into the carriage and saw Xiao Chun sitting in the carriage, looking at some documents in his hands. Finished? Xiao Chun put the documents in his hand aside and reached out to hold Jingyu's hand. Yes, I'm done. Jingyu leaned into Xiao Chen's arms and sighed comfortably. I'm so tired. Quickly massage my waist. It's so sore. Okay. Xiao Chen responded. He supported Jingyu with one hand and massaged Jingyu's waist with the other. He said unhappily, You're pregnant. You should let the servants do these things. Why do you have to run around by yourself? There's nothing to do at home anyway. It's good for the child to come out more often. This massage by Xiao Chan was very comfortable. Jingyu mumbled in response and buried her head in Xiao Chen's arms. Smelling the familiar scent on Xiao Chen, she fell asleep. Xiao Chen looked at the person in his arms and frowned slightly. However, when he looked at Jingyu's eyes, he instantly felt his entire body soften. He reached out to cover Jingyu with a blanket and then lowered his head indifferently. He tightened his grip on Jingyu and adjusted himself to a comfortable position. Then, he leisurely walked towards the prince's mansion. The carriage of the 9 emperors left the restaurant. On the opposite side of the restaurant, a green figure quietly watched this scene. The child at her arms seemed to babble twice, and then there was a knock on the door. Come in. A very indifferent voice sounded, and a figure flashed in. The old man in tattered clothes stood in front of the man and bowed slightly. Young master, this old servant has returned. Wasn't this old man in tattered clothes the same old man who had been stopped at the entrance of the restaurant? Why haven't you changed your clothes yet? The man seemed very displeased. Don't smoke the child. I don't know where you found this old fellow. As the man spoke, he hugged the child in his arms a little tighter. Hee. Young master, this old servant's acting just now is not bad, right? The old man chuckled as if he didn't care at all. Terrible, the man said without any trace of politeness. However, this 9th imperial concubine's performance really surprised me. Also, that pair of different colored eyes are really beautiful. Young master is still so merciless. The old man seemed very unhappy that he wasn't praised. He slightly lowered his head and said, However, this dish made by this imperial concubine is really delicious. This old servant almost forgot to come out. Chapter 1732. You disrespectful old man. Quickly go and clean yourself up. That man said angrily. That slightly tilted face was so handsome and beautiful. Only then did the old man leave resentfully. The person hiding in the darkness had a faint smile on his face. When Jingyu woke up again, the sky outside was already pitch black. Jingyu was also sleeping on her own bed. Imperial concubine, you're awake? In Xiao's voice came from outside the tent. Come in. Jingyu lifted the blanket and sat up. The lights in the room were also lit. In Xiao walked in and helped Jingyu put on her shoes as she said, Imperial Uncle's prediction was really accurate. He asked this servant to come and wait. Imperial concubine, you will definitely wake up. Fortune teller. Jingyu scolded with a smile and said, Where is Xiao Chun? Imperial Uncle still has official business to attend to. He is in the study room now. Imperial Uncle has prepared the meal and asked Imperial concubine to eat first. Imperial Uncle also said that if Imperial concubine can't sleep, you can go to the study room to accompany the 9th emperors. In Xiao said one thing at a time. The last sentence wasn't said by Imperial Uncle, but by you, right? Jingyu glared at In Xiao and said, Imperial concubine, you are really smart. In Xiao said with a slightly red face, Go and bring the meal to the study room. I will go and eat with Xiao Chun. Jingyu stood up and looked at the clothes she had put on. She said, He is attending to official business, so he is probably hungry. Yes, this servant will go and do it right away. In Xiao replied happily and turned around to do it. Jingyu looked at In Xiao's appearance, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. These peaceful days were really comfortable. When Jingyu finished tidying up and came to the study room, she happened to see the person who brought the meal over. After putting down the food, he left. Xiao Chun, Jingyu called out. Xiao Chun turned around and looked at Jingyu curiously. When did you become so gentle and considerate? You even know to come and eat with me? Hey, what do you mean? Jingyu glared at Xiao Chan with dissatisfaction and said, Are you saying that I'm not gentle and considerate enough? I wouldn't dare. Xiao Chen reached out and pulled Jingyu into his arms. With a faint smile in his eyes, he said, I just saw how considerate you are and felt happy. That's why I asked casually. Then you'd better put away your joy quickly. Jingyu reached out and pushed Xiao Chun away slightly. She said with disdain, I didn't want to come. If Yin Xiao didn't remind me, I wouldn't have thought of you. Jingyu said as she pulled Xiao Chen's hand away and sat to the side to eat. When Xiao Chen saw Jingyu acting like this, he sighed deeply in his heart. Why did I bring this up for no reason? This pregnant woman was definitely not to be trifled with. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and walked to Jingyu's side. He sat down and said gently, No matter what, I'm very happy that you're here. Really? Jingyu was eating when she heard Xiao Chen's words. She turned to look at Xiao Chen suspiciously and asked, Of course it's true. Xiao Chen nodded firmly. He reached out and picked up some food for Jingyu and said, This tastes really good. Try it. Feed me. Jingyu ordered Xiao Chen around with satisfaction. Xiao Chen was also happy to be ordered around by Jingyu. When they were almost done eating, he called someone over to clean up the food. Jingyu leaned against Xiao Chen on the soft couch for a long time. Chapter 1733. This was the study room. Without Xiao Chen's permission, no one could enter. Just like now, Jingyu could only come out by herself. Yin Xiao and the rest could not enter. Imperial concubine, you're awake? When Yin Xiao saw the door open, she hurriedly put the veil on Jingyu's head. Jingyu did not mind at first, but Yin Xiao was determined not to let Jingyu take it off. Jingyu could only let her be. After washing up properly in the room, she put away the gauze hat. Jingyu walked around the courtyard casually. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and asked someone to bring a charcoal pencil. Jingyu had lived in the prince's residence for a long time. The servants naturally knew that she did not need a brush, but had a charcoal pencil. Now that they heard that Jingyu wanted to draw something, they naturally prepared a good charcoal pencil for Jingyu to use. It's so comfortable to have someone to serve me. Jingyu looked at the charcoal pencil that had been prepared properly by the side, and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She sighed and said, When Yin Xiao heard Jingyu's words, her heart ached. It was as if she could see how much suffering Jingyu had suffered outside. Jingyu saw Yin Xiao's gaze and was speechless. She quickly said, Yin Xiao, don't look at me like that. I don't have any other intentions. This servant only feels sorry for Imperial concubine. You have suffered so much. Yin Xiao looked at Jingyu and said with heartache, Miss, when did I say that the outside world is not good? Jingyu spread out the paper and said calmly, I've never suffered. It's just that the comfort of the imperial city makes me a little uncomfortable. Imperial concubine, don't tell me you still want to leave? When Yin Xiao heard Jingyu's words, her eyes widened in shock. What nonsense are you talking about? Jingyu found it funny and said, All right, go outside and serve me. Yes. Yin Xiao responded and silently walked to the back. She reached out and closed the door. Jingyu then slowly sat down. She held the charcoal pencil in her hand and narrowed her eyes. She seemed to be thinking about what to draw. After a moment of silence, she slowly drew an exquisite picture on the paper. It was a small piece of clothing. There were even some descriptions on the clothing. Without looking, it was obvious that it was a child's clothing. Jingyu drew very seriously. She narrowed her eyes and thought. She could not draw her own clothing, but she could draw it. She had never seen it. Yin Xiao took a look and then retracted her gaze. She silently put down the things and went out. I really want to know how Xiao Chan will look in a suit. Jingyu looked at the suits on the table with satisfaction. One was big, one was small, and the other was a wedding dress on a piece of paper. This was probably a dream that Jingyu always had in her heart. Jingyu did not know if it could be realized with the materials from the ancient times. Jingyu was not in a hurry. She could wait. Jingyu thought of it now, so she drew it. Looking at the suit and wedding dress in front of her, Jingyu's eyes were filled with a faint smile. She really wanted to know how she would look when she stood next to Xiao Chen in a wedding dress. Chapter 1734. Then there would be two children, one boy and one girl, standing beside them. Just thinking about that scene made her feel that it was incomparably adorable. However, would the baby in her stomach be a girl? Jingyu lowered her head slightly and looked at her stomach. Her stomach hadn't shown how big it was yet. Jingyu thought for a moment and put away the suit and wedding dress that she had drawn. Then she began to draw by the side. When the sun was setting, Jingyu asked someone to come in and clean up the table. Then she washed her hands. Just as she was thinking about something, she heard the sound of people paying respects outside the door. Xiao Chun had returned. "You're back so early today?" Jingyu sat up straight. Seeing that Xiao Chun had returned, a faint smile appeared in her eyes as she said with her eyebrows curved, "I missed you, so I came back." Xiao Chun responded and reached out to take a sip of the tea that Jingyu had poured for him. After taking a sip, he heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at Xiao Chen's appearance, he must have been very busy these past few days. "Are you tired?" Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile. She reached out to massage Xiao Chen's shoulders and said, "I'll let you experience my gentle and virtuous side." "Okay." When Xiao Chen heard Jingyu's words, he instantly laughed out loud. He reached out to hug Jingyu's waist and bent down to place his ear on Jingyu's stomach. He said, "I'll let you hear if our child was obedient today. He's more obedient than you." Jingyu reached out to hug Xiao Chen's head and said with a smile, Let me tell you a piece of good news." Xiao Chen straightened up and hugged Jingyu in his arms. He said happily, "There's news about Little Potato. It was sent by someone from Miracle Physician Valley. The person who saved Little Potato should be the Valley Master of Miracle Physician Valley." "Really?" Jingyu happily held Xiao Chen's head and said, "Then where is the Valley Master of the Miracle Medical Valley? Is Little Potato all right?" The whereabouts of the Valley Master of Miracle Medical Valley have always been uncertain. If he hides from us, we won't be able to find him. You don't have to worry too much. The medical skills of the Valley Master of Miracle Medical Valley are much better than that of Qin Ji's master. Little Potato will definitely be fine. Since he said that he would come back after a year, we will wait for a year." Xiao Chan slowly clenched his fists and said, "If he doesn't return in a year, I'll attack Miracle Medical Valley. I like to see if he still wants the lives of the people in his valley." Jingyu frowned when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Jingyu knew very well that this wasn't the time for her to mess around. The Valley Master of Miracle Medical Valley had saved Little Potato's life. Even if she missed her son dearly, she couldn't ignore the person who saved her child's life. Xiao Chen's suggestion was the worst solution. Jingyu didn't want to go that far. "Okay." Jingyu took a deep breath and said, "I'll wait. When Little Potato comes back, I'll definitely beat up the Valley Master of Miracle Medical Valley." Jingyu said angrily. Xiao Chun gently hugged Jingyu and said, "Let your husband do this kind of rough work. My wife can just watch from the side." "Okay." Jingyu smiled when she heard Xiao Chen's words. She hugged Jingyu's neck and whispered to her. Chapter 1735. When it was time for dinner, Jingyu and Xiao Chun went to the study together after dinner. Jingyu was addicted to reading stories, and Xiao Chun was happy to let Jingyu accompany him. Every time he finished his work, he could look up and see the woman he loved reading a book. Xiao Chun was intoxicated by the feeling of bliss and contentment. Late at night, Xiao Chun heard Jingyu yawning. Without thinking, he put away the paper and brush in his hands and led Jingyu back to the room to rest. They loved this kind of day. Xiao Chun was very satisfied, and Jingyu also felt very peaceful. In the morning, Xiao Chun left. Jingyu was trimming the branches and leaves of the flowers and plants. She narrowed her eyes slightly, and under the sunlight they were so dazzling. Imperial concubine, eldest young master requests an audience. Just as Jingyu was pruning vigorously, she heard a call from outside. Who else could the eldest young master that the manservant mentioned be? Naturally, it was Xiao Bai. Jingyu smiled and put down the scissors in her hand. "Go and invite him in," Jingyu said. From afar, she saw Xiao Bai walking in with steady steps. "Mother!" Xiao Bai called out happily and quickly walked towards Jingyu. "You're willing to come back from the army?" Jingyu looked at Xiao Bai's tanned appearance and then looked at Xiao Bai's clothes. Her eyes were tinged with a faint smile as she said calmly. Since Xiao Bai came back with her, he immersed himself in the army camp. Jinglang went to Yangzhou to welcome Feng Zhu and would probably come to the capital in a few days. How is it? Is it good in the army? Jingyu walked into the room and placed pastries and tea on the table. Then she asked, "The training was very tiring. Did you get hurt?" "Mother, I've grown up. This injury is nothing to me." Xiaobai drank the tea and said happily, "I like the days in the army. If father didn't call me back, I would have stayed in the army until Aunt Lan's wedding." "You?" Jingyu glared at Xiaobai and said, "It's good that you're back, but why did Xiao Chun summon you back?" "My father said he wanted me to learn from him about the royal court and understand the affairs of the royal court." Xiaobai pursed his lips and said, "My father said it would be good for me to learn." Since it's Xiao Chun who said it, you should go and learn it well." Jingyu also nodded slightly. Although she didn't know why Xiao Chun wanted Xiao Bai to learn, since it was Xiao Chen's order, it was fine. "Mother, is the little sister very obedient?" Xiao Bai blinked his eyes and looked at Jingyu's stomach with joy as he asked, "Little sister?" Jingyu was stunned. Then she smiled and said happily, "Do you also want a little sister?" "Yes, I want a little sister like mother." Xiao Bai looked up at Jingyu and said happily, "Mother also wants a girl, but I don't know if it's a boy or a girl." Jingyu looked at her stomach and frowned slightly. Then she said, "But whether it's a boy or a girl, we all like it." Jingyu and Xiaobai laughed and talked for a long time in the room. When the beautiful maids outside saw this scene, the corners of their mouths curled up slightly in envy. Chapter 1736. Jingyu and Xiaobai chatted for a long time until someone called for Xiao Chun. Only then did Xiaobai leave. Jingyu looked at Xiao Bai's departing figure. His small figure was upright, just like Xiao Chun. Imperial concubine is so good to eldest young master, as if he's your own. In Xiao helped Jingyu sit down and sighed. "To me, he is my own child." Jingyu frowned slightly and looked at In Xiao. "In the future, eldest young master will be the eldest young master of our prince's residence. His surname is Xiao. If you dare to disrespect him, I won't let you off easily. Imperial concubine, please forgive us. This servant doesn't dare." After Jingyu said this, everyone immediately knelt down, their eyes filled with fear. Jingyu looked at everyone kneeling on the ground and calmly turned her head. "You can all leave." Everyone complied and carefully retreated. When Jingyu saw Xiao Chun, it was already nighttime. "Why are you back so late?" Jingyu rubbed her head and asked Xiao Chun. "I had some matters to take care of and lost track of time." Xiao Chun sat down beside Jingyu and said, "I heard that you gave Xiao Bai Shu Wei today. Could it be that she had sensed my thoughts? Why are you supporting me like this?" "That's what I wanted to ask you as well." Jingyu looked at Xiao Chun curiously and asked, "Why did you summon Xiao Bai back? You even allowed him to participate in court matters. What are your plans?" "Didn't you already guess?" Xiao Chun looked calmly at Jingyu and said, "I want you to tell me yourself." "You are..." Xiao Chun hugged Jingyu helplessly and said, "I don't want our child to fight with these people. However, I have no choice but to allow the prince's residence to stand here and balance the Tokyo-S authority." "So you want to groom Xiao Bai to be your successor?" Jingyu gritted her teeth and continued Xiao Chen's words. She reached out her hand and hit Xiao Chun. "What if Xiao Bai isn't willing? He's still a child. When this king was his age, he already held great power in his hands." Xiao Chun silently said. However, when he saw Jingyu's cold expression, he silently swallowed the rest of his words. "Of course, I'm not forcing him. That's why I've talked with him today." "So, you pig." Jingyu angrily slapped Xiao Chen's chest and said, "You're his savior. If you say that, he won't be able to refuse even if he wants to. You're making me angry." Okay. Xiao Chun quickly held Jingyu's hand and said, "I don't want our child to be involved in the matters in the imperial city. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not good to Xiao Bai. How about this? Can you talk to him tomorrow?" Xiao Chun saw that Jingyu was about to get angry again and immediately said, "Xiao Bai can choose for himself. If he's unwilling, I won't force him. If he's willing, I'll ask the emperor to make him the heir tomorrow. Jingyu pursed her lips and glared at Xiao Chun. She still looked unhappy. Xiao Chun suddenly had a headache. He thought that he should have told Jingyu about this earlier. Otherwise, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Chapter 1737. Xiao Chun, when you took Xiaobai in as your godson, you were thinking about today, right? Jingyu said angrily as she looked at Xiao Chun. I swear to God, that's definitely not the case. Xiao Chun hurriedly raised his hand and swore seriously. Jingyu was still angry. She pushed Xiao Chun away and said, the child is grown up now. He can make his own choices. Yes, I was wrong. Xiao Chun sighed deeply and admitted his mistake. Go away. I'll talk to Xiao by tomorrow. Jingyu pushed Xiao Chun away and walked to the bed to lie down. Xiao Chun took off his clothes and said, I didn't want to force Xiao Bai to do anything. I'll do whatever you want. Don't be angry. Humph. Jingyu turned around and ignored him. Xiao Chun climbed onto the bed and hugged Jingyu as he said, you go and talk to Xiao Bai. If he's not happy at all, I won't say a word. Stop arguing, go to sleep. Jingyu covered her head and closed her eyes to sleep. Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu and tightened his arms around Jingyu. He said sarcastically, it's not good for the child to be angry. Okay. Jingyu responded indifferently and turned around to go back to sleep. The incident with Xiao Chun that night was still a knot in Jingyu's heart. Jingyu felt that this was too unfair to Xiao Bai. Early in the morning, Jingyu was sitting in the courtyard and basking in the sun when she saw Xiao Bai walk over from afar. Xiao Bai was dressed in black and stood in front of Jingyu. Jingyu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile as she slowly sat up. You're here? Jingyu called out softly. Mother, you were looking for me? Xiao Bai looked at Jingyu and asked. Jingyu nodded slowly. Yes. Jingyu stood up, looked at Xiao Bai, and said, I'm going out. Can you come with me? All right. When Xiao Bai heard Jingyu's words, he paused for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. Jingyu had people prepare a carriage, took the blueprint, and left with Xiao Bai. Today's weather was exceptionally good. Jingyu sat in the carriage and looked at the blueprints in her hands without saying a word. Xiao Bai curiously looked at the blueprints in Jingyu's hands and leaned over. Mother, what is this? Xiao Bai looked up at Jingyu and asked, Did Mother draw this herself? Yes. Jingyu responded and handed the blueprints in her hands to Xiao Bai. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she said, Take a look. Do you like these things? What kind of clothes are these? Why haven't I seen them before? Xiao Bai looked at the blueprints in Jingyu's hands. The clothes drawn on the blueprints had clear symbols. Xiao Bai looked at them and blinked his eyes in amazement. These are the new clothes I'm going to make for you. Jingyu reached out and patted Xiao Bai's head. She said faintly, Look at you. You're just like your father, wearing all black. In a few days, it will be your Aunt Lan's wedding day. Naturally, I have to make some beautiful clothes. When Xiao Bai heard Jingyu's words, he was stunned. He looked up at Jingyu and felt a warm current in his heart. His eyes were filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mother. Xiao Bai lowered his head and said, What are you thanking me for? Jingyu reached out and patted Xiao Bai's head. She said in a conflicted tone, Other mothers make clothes for their children with their own hands. I don't have the ability, so I can only let others make these clothes. Chapter 1738. Xiao Bai immediately laughed and said cheerfully, Mother, if you ever learned how to make your own clothes, I wouldn't believe it. Hey, you stinking brat. Jingyu's eyes widened and she pinched Xiao Bai's cheeks in disgust. The two of them started to quarrel in the carriage. Madam, we're here. In Xiao's voice sounded from outside. Jingyu and Xiao Bai both tidied up their clothes before stepping out of the carriage. Outside the carriage, they stopped at an Consort. Where is this? Xiao Bai stood beside Jingyu and looked at the huge tailor shop. It looked different from other shops and from what he had seen before. This is my business. Let's go in and open your eyes. Jingyu winked at Xiao Bai and said gently, When Xiao Bai heard Jingyu say that it was her business, his eyes widened slightly and he walked in. looking at the business. His eyes were tinged with a hint of surprise. The manager inside had already received the news and quickly came out to greet them. "Boss, you're here?" The manager was very thin and small. He was currently the manager of this shop. Jingyu looked at him and nodded slightly, indicating that she knew. "This is your eldest young master. Today I'm going to make some clothes for him and the child in my belly," Jingyu said indifferently. She turned around and walked into the house. She walked straight into the inner room and sat down on the chair that had been prepared long ago. "Boss." After Tang Honyang went to the northern pastoral, Su Qian had single-handedly taken care of everything here. Jingyu nodded with satisfaction and said, "You've taken care of this place very well. It seems that Tang Honyang didn't misjudge you." "What are you saying?" "It's all thanks to boss and the second manager." Su Qian bowed and said, "Let's sit down and talk," Jingyu said faintly. She pushed the drawing on the table towards Su Qian and said, "I just took a look at the style of the clothes in your shop. I drew it before, but you guys only made some slight changes. There hasn't been any new styles. Today I drew some designs for clothes. Take a look and see if you can make them," Jingyu said as she extended her hand towards Su Qian. "Yes." Su Qian picked up the drawing on the table. After seeing the contents of the drawing, his eyes suddenly lit up. He said in surprise, "Boss, your drawing came just in time." "And?" Jingyu raised her eyebrows and asked curiously, "What do you mean?" "Boss, you don't know." When Su Qian heard Jingyu's question, he put down the drawing in his hand and said angrily, "Not long ago, a new tailor shop opened up across the street. I don't know where the expert came from. The style of the clothes made by this shop is very novel. However, when I studied it carefully, I found out that they were simply copying us. They just changed it a little and made it their own. It's really infuriating," Su Qian said angrily. When Jingyu heard this, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She said with interest, "They copied our things? They even made it their own and made it so easy to make money? This is a little interesting." Jingyu narrowed her eyes slightly. Chapter 1739. During this period of time, our business hasn't been very good. If it weren't for the old customers left behind by the boss, our clothes would be piled up here. Su Qian sighed deeply and said, "Originally, our shop supplied the palace, but then that incident happened. Now, the palace is also cut off, so..." Su Qian's words reminded Jingyu. She narrowed her eyes and said calmly, "I know. We'll talk about this later. Keep this pattern well, don't leak it out." Jingyu glanced at the pattern and said, "Let's go and choose some materials. First, I want to choose the clothes I want to make." "Yes." Su Qian knew that Jingyu must have taken his words to heart, so there was no need for him to say more. He silently followed behind Jingyu, turned around, and went to the cloth selection area. After selecting some materials, Su Qian looked at Jingyu. Then he gave some clothes to Xiao Bai, Xiao Chun, Little Potato, and himself. Only then was he satisfied. Looking at Xiao Bai's body being measured, Jingyu suddenly realized that Xiao Bai seemed to have grown a lot. Time really passed too quickly. Jingyu lowered her eyes slightly. It was unknown what she was thinking about until Xiao Bai's voice rang in her ears. "Mother?" Xiao Bai saw Jingyu in a daze and asked with a frown, "Mother, are you tired?" "No, I was just thinking about something." Jingyu stood up and looked at Su Qian, asking, "Is it done?" "Go back to the boss. It's done. I've already memorized the eldest young master's measurements." Su Qian nodded. "Okay, after you're done, send the clothes to the prince's mansion." After Jingyu said this, she stood up and walked towards the door. Su Qian wasn't in a hurry, as if what he said to Jingyu was just a casual complaint. Jingyu looked at Su Qian and nodded with satisfaction. This person was really good, knowing how to read people's minds. He was a good person for doing business. Jingyu was very satisfied with Su Qian, and the corner of her mouth hooked up slightly. When they reached the door, they didn't get on the carriage. Instead, they walked around the carriage and went to the opposite side. Jingyu stood in the crowded tailor shop and looked at the board hanging high in front of her. The words Lian Nikang were written on it. When Jingyu saw these words, the corner of her mouth twitched. What was this thing? Why did Jingyu feel a sense of familiarity when she saw these words? Lian Nikang, Wasn't this the female lead in some TV drama? Jingyu thought for a long time, but couldn't figure out which TV drama it was. However, Jingyu looked at the name in front of her and felt unhappy again. Her shop was called Nikhang Court, so what was the meaning of calling it Lian Nikhang? Someone come. Jingyu stood quietly at the door and stared at the board. She said, "Go take down that board and burn it." Yes. 15th interrogation officer quietly took a step forward. After responding, he waved his hand at the person behind him. Nobody knew where the person behind him got a staircase from, but just like that, he set it on top of the building. Under everyone's shocked cries, he took down the plaque. Clang! The huge signboard fell at the entrance. The entrance, which had been bustling with people, immediately quieted down. When everyone saw this scene, their eyes were filled with astonishment. Chapter 1740. Everyone who was walking around also came over. When they saw this scene, they were very surprised and seemed to be wondering what was going on. Xiao Bai, who was standing at the side, looked at Jingyu's actions and then looked at the guards behind her. When they were leaving, Xiao Bai was still wondering why she brought so many guards with her. Could it be to protect Jingyu? But looking at them, it didn't seem like they were protecting Jingyu. Now that he saw this scene and then looked at Jingyu's calm appearance, he suddenly seemed to understand something and continued to watch silently. "You, who are you people? How dare you cause trouble so brazenly? Do you have any respect for the law?" The person who walked out was full of fat. When he saw the board that was smashed to the ground, he was so angry that the fat on his body trembled. He pointed angrily at Jingyu and the others and asked. When Jingyu came out today, she specially changed her clothes. She wore very simple clothes, and the guard she brought with her even changed into the clothes of ordinary servants. At first glance, they looked like ordinary rich people. Who would have thought that they were the current 9th imperial concubine? This fat man probably took one look at Jingyu's clothes, and his sharp eyes could tell at a glance that they were not high-end clothes. Therefore, he jumped out and shouted loudly, "Law!" Jingyu looked at this person with a faint smile in her eyes and said, "In my eyes, there has never been such a thing as law." Jingyu's words were very arrogant. But looking at Jingyu's appearance, she really had the right to be arrogant. After all, Jingyu was speaking the truth. So many things had happened in the past. When had there ever been such a thing as law? When they were in the imperial city, any one of the people who fought against Jingyu would be beaten to death in minutes if they tried to talk about the law with Jingyu. You people. The fat man looked at Jingyu and the others with eyes full of anger and said, "Go and report this to the authorities." Huh? Jingyu looked at the person who was running out to report to the authorities. A faint smile appeared in her eyes. She said calmly, Go quickly. Let me tell you, this is a time of peace. You people are bullying people on the streets. I will definitely arrest all of you." The fat man looked fiercely at Jingyu and the others and said, "Do you know who my uncle is? How dare you behave so atrociously in my territory?" The fat man said arrogantly, "Oh, who is your uncle? I'm really curious." Jingyu's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. It seemed that there was something fishy going on here. How capable was this person who dared to appear and oppose him? Jingyu curiously curled her lips. When the fat man heard Jingyu's question, he thought that Jingyu was frightened. His eyes were full of pride. Ha ha ha, now you know how to be afraid. When the fat man saw Jingyu and the others cowering when they heard that he had a backer, he was relieved. He thought that some big shot had come, but it turned out that they were just cowards. But since they had fallen into his hands, he definitely couldn't let them off easily. The fat man stared at Jingyu and said, "Let me tell you, my uncle is the assistant minister of the Imperial Secretariat. You don't even know this, and you dare to ruin my reputation. Huh, you are courting death." Chapter 1741. When Jingyu heard this person's words, she instantly wondered if she had met the legendary idiot. Jingyu turned to look at Yin Xiao and asked, "Do you know who the assistant minister of the Secretariat is?" "This servant doesn't know." Yin Xiao thought about it carefully, then lowered her head and said she didn't know. Jingyu once again turned her gaze to Xing Shiwu and Xiao Bai. Both of them were at a loss. How would Xing Shiwu know what happened in the imperial court? Xiao Bai just came back yesterday, so it was even more impossible for him to know. Jingyu nodded seriously. If so many people didn't know about it, then it must be a nameless pawn. Since he was just a nobody, why was he showing off? He was really inexperienced. Jingyu sighed deeply. She narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the people in front of her. She narrowed her eyes calmly. Assistant Minister of the Secretariat? Your uncle? Jingyu nodded seriously and said, I'll remember that. Is there anything else? What? What else? When the fatty saw Jingyu's reaction and heard Jingyu's question again, he was instantly stunned and looked at Jingyu strangely. Of course I'm asking if you have any other backing. Don't tell me you only have the Assistant Minister of the Secretariat as your backing? Jingyu asked calmly. You. The fatty looked at Jingyu and said coldly, I will definitely send all of you to prison and torture you. I'll let you know how powerful I am. Oh. Jingyu nodded in understanding and said, Looks like the Minister of Justice is also related to you. Not bad. With this kind of backing, you can indeed do whatever you want in this area. Jingyu nodded in satisfaction. It was quite interesting to play like this. Beside her, 15 Xing and Xiao Bai looked at each other. 15 Xing suddenly felt that following Madame was also risky. Every time they came out, they caused trouble. Last time it was the Ministry of Revenue and the Supreme Court. This time, it was the Assistant Minister of the Secretariat and the Ministry of Justice. TSK, TSK, TSK. What a huge storm. Xing Shiwu sighed deeply, but he was extremely excited. He originally thought that protecting a woman would be a boring thing, but now it seemed more interesting than going out to kill people. Very good. Jingyu nodded silently, turned around, and waved her hand. Don't worry, go in and destroy everything. Remember, burn everything that can be burned. Don't burn it next door. Your madam is very poor. I can't afford it. Yes. When Jingyu said that she was very poor, everyone almost laughed out loud. They responded loudly and rushed in like a swarm of bees, scaring the people in the rooms so much that they all ran out. Then, everyone saw Jingyu crossing her arms and calmly looking at these people who were smashing things. Her posture of burning things was really obedient. She didn't let the fire spread to the opposite side at all. The shopkeeper and a manservant in the shop were crying and shouting, attracting the attention of the people on the street. How is it? Jingyu smiled at these people and said, Is my burning technique okay? The fatty was so angry that the fat all over his body was trembling, but he was stunned and couldn't say a word. Jingyu calmly curved the corner of her mouth, her eyes full of smiles. Chapter 1742. On this side, the flames of war raged across the sky. On the other side, an Aichang court saw Jingyu heading over and smashed the signboard without saying a word. Then, after finding out who the mastermind was, she arrogantly rushed in and smashed things. Su Qian originally thought that after Jingyu found out who the mastermind was, she would adopt a gentler policy. Who would have thought that after finding out, she would become even more arrogant and burn down the shop? Su Qian silently wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and sighed deeply. As expected of the 9th Imperial concubine, she was really arrogant. While this side was in chaos, on the other side, the manservant had successfully brought the soldiers over. There were so many of them that it could be called a large number of soldiers. In an instant, half the street was filled with soldiers. The leader had a dignified expression, which made Jingyu raise her eyebrows curiously. Who are you? How dare you cause trouble at the foot of the emperor? This person was interesting. The moment he arrived, he immediately pinned a big hat on her. Jingyu calmly turned her head and looked at him. Through the veil, she sized him up. What did you just say? Jingyu took a step forward and asked this person. You are the person who smashed this shop. The man's dignified expression made Jingyu slightly stunned. She nodded seriously and said, Yes, I'm the person who burned down this shop. You really have guts. You even dare to burn down Lord Gao's shop. Men, arrest all these people who dare to cause trouble here. The man waved his hand and was about to arrest them. Xing Shiwu and Xiao Bai immediately stepped forward. Seeing this, Jingyu rolled her eyes and waved her hand slightly at Xiao Bai. Don't move. Follow this officer. Madam, Yin Xiao was instantly anxious. Jingyu shook her head slightly at Yin Xiao and revealed a faint smile. She really wanted to experience what it felt like to be arrested on the street and thrown into jail. Seeing Jingyu like this, Yin Xiao was instantly anxious. Jingyu was still pregnant. How could she cause such a ruckus? However, Jingyu completely ignored Yin Xiao and obediently followed this officer. When the fatty saw that Jingyu, who was incomparably arrogant just a moment ago, actually followed this person without a second word, he instantly felt like he had a stomach full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. He completely didn't know how this person did things. She was obviously extremely arrogant just a moment ago. Now, she just followed this person. Jingyu, Xiao Bai, and the rest were directly thrown into the jail. The stench instantly made Jingyu feel nauseous. She covered her mouth and retched. Finicky woman. You'll have a good time later. The prison guard locked the cell door. The way he looked at Jingyu and Yin Xiao made one have the urge to kill him at any moment. Jingyu held it in. How is it? How does it feel to be arrested on the street and locked up in jail? Jingyu turned her head and asked Xing Shiwu and Xiao Bai. Mother, if father finds out that I followed you out and didn't protect you well and even let you get arrested, father will definitely skin me alive. Xiao Bai's little face was full of conflict as he looked at Jingyu and said, he wouldn't dare. Jingyu instantly glared and said, don't worry. The people we offended this time are people from the Secretariat. If we don't go to jail once, this matter won't get out of hand. I saw something in Xiao Chen's study last time. Chapter 1743. This assistant minister of the Secretariat, Gao Wenyuan, was one of the people who supported the second prince. His Majesty has always wanted to get hold of this person's weakness. Unfortunately, this person is too cunning, so he didn't do anything. Now that he has found him, how can I not go to jail to help Xiao Chun? Jingyu said it so casually. Xiao Bai and Xing Shiwu, who were at the side, heard it and nodded slowly. They were wondering why the madam was so obedient to come to the prison cell today. They thought she was really here to experience it, but now it seemed like that was not the case. Jingyu always had her reasons for doing things, but if Jingyu was really here to have fun, Xing Shiwu would also think it was normal. After all, when Jingyu was pregnant, Siyu Tian was still shouting that she wanted to see snow. This woman's thoughts, it was really hard to guess. 15th Interrogation Officer stood to one side silently. Jingyu had finally gotten used to the strange smell in the prison cell. She narrowed her eyes and sized up the prison cell, as if she was very curious. This prison cell really couldn't be compared to the prison cells in the palace. Jingyu thought about it with a sigh. She was also someone who had been in jail before. When she was learning etiquette in the academy, she was called to the palace by Fu Ruoqing to participate in some stupid tea party. She splashed water on Fu Ruoqing's face and was locked up in jail because of that incident. That jail was much cleaner than this. However, thinking about Fu Ruoqing, Jingyu was slightly stunned. She almost forgot about this person. Yin Xiao, do you know where Fu Ruoqing went after that? After Jingyu was chased out of the palace, she didn't hear much news about Fu Ruoqing. She didn't know if Fu Ruoqing was dead or alive. Speaking of which, she was a pitiful woman, imperial concubine of the previous dynasty. Yin Xiao was slightly stunned when she heard Jingyu's question. She then said, this servant heard that imperial concubine Fu has always been in the palace, but I don't know if she is dead or alive. I don't know what she looks like now. The previous dynasty. Jingyu was stunned when she heard Fu Yinxiao's reply. That's right. The Tokyo dynasty had already changed. Jingyu lowered her eyes and didn't say a word. As soon as Jingyu and the others were arrested and thrown into jail, the fat man from the shop came over. The moment he entered the Ministry of Justice, he started crying and wailing. All right, look at yourself. In the mansion, the Minister of Justice, Jin Yinghua, looked at the fat man and said, I'll lock them up for now. Have you found out about their backgrounds? What kind of background could he have? It must be that old bastard Chao Go. Seeing that I stole his business, he sent people to cause trouble. The fat man said angrily. I said that I would give him a third of the money, but he was still not satisfied. Today's matter must have something to do with Dog Chow. Big brother, for the sake of this little brother's filial piety to you, please help me. The fat man cried and yelled at the side. Aren't I helping you? Jean Inghua straightened up and said, It's just that today's matter is so big that it's not easy for me to deal with it. The fat man instantly laughed. He knew that Jean Inghua meant that it was difficult to do things without money. He chuckled and said, Big brother, if you can let me deal with this person, this box is yours. Chapter 1744. The fat man said as he waved to the person beside him. Immediately, the person carried a box in. The person opened the box, and the whole box of ingots made Jean Inghua sit up immediately. Big brother, what do you think? The fat man smiled at Jean Inghua and asked. Huh? Jean Inghua was silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed and said, That's easy, easy. Fat brother, my people are investigating the origin of these people. If I don't find out, I really don't dare to be ruthless. However, seeing that we have been friends for so many years, I can let you play a little in the prison. Jean Inghua looked at the fat man with a smile and said, As long as this person's identity is confirmed, you can play however you want. Ha ha, I'm relieved when Big Brother does things. The fat man suddenly smiled. The two of them looked so harmonious. Jean Inghua waved her hand and said, Men, take my brother to the prison. Yes. The fatty laughed and left. The smile on Jean Inghua's face instantly disappeared. She looked in the direction where the plate left and cursed in disgust. Then she silently walked to the side and looked at the box of gold ingots. His eyes turned into crescents as he smiled. He could make life difficult for anyone, but not for money. Jean Inghua looked at the box of jewelry with satisfaction. Just as she was daydreaming, she heard a miserable cry from outside. Sir, sir. Not good, not good. The manservant rushed into the room, his eyes filled with terror as he shouted. What are you screaming for? What's not good? Jean Inghua was happy when she suddenly heard such a cry. She frowned and turned to look at the manservant who was sweating and asked, What's going on? Sir, something bad happened. The manservant looked like he was about to cry. He looked at Jean Inghua in horror and said, The person we caught is... Who is it? When Jean Inghua saw the manservant's appearance, she immediately frowned and asked with widened eyes. She didn't know why, but at this moment, Jean Inghua suddenly had a very bad premonition. It's the 9th Imperial concubine, the manservant said with a sobbing voice. What did you say? When Jean Inghua heard this person's words, she suddenly felt a flash of lightning in her head. Her mind went blank, and she looked at the manservant with eyes full of horror. The person we caught is the 9th Imperial concubine and the Prince of the Palace, the adopted son of the 9th Emperors. The manservant's lips were pale. After he said this, Jean Inghua's legs suddenly, and she sat on the chair. Sir, quickly let them go. Before the 9th uncle gets the news, we should comfort the 9th Imperial concubine. The servant quickly said. When Jean Inghua heard the servant's words, her face turned even paler. Quick, go to the prison. Jean Inghua suddenly jumped up as if she had seen a ghost. She thought about what the fat man had just said. The fat man must have done something to the 9th Imperial concubine. When she thought of this, Jean Inghua's heart stopped beating. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.